What's up? It's Zach Boog from 107.5 WGCI. Here doing a forum, Black Men Speak, and we're really trying to get information on the COVID-19, just the situation of COVID-19 and the vaccine. As you know, we've worked with the Chicago Department of Public Health and the Protect Chicago team, just getting information out about COVID-19. First, it started out as just giving out information. Okay, then we got into, okay, I think we need to start getting vaccinated, okay? And now we're at the point where we're starting to notice that Black men really aren't trying to get vaccinated. And as a Black man, I know we don't like going to doctors anyway, okay? I don't even like taking over-the-counter medicine. So getting vaccinated was a thing that I really had to wrap my mind around. In Chicago, I wanted you to talk to some real professionals, some real doctors. Every man on here is a certified doctor except me. I'm just a dirty nightclub comedian. So I don't know anything, but we have doctors on here, Dr. Kareem Watson, Dr. Damon Arnold, and Dr. Garth Walker. Thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you.
Glad to be here.
So I want to start this off just really talking about some things that I've just heard in the community, just things that I hear people say. One thing that I hear Black people say is, you know, Black people, they barely pass biology, but they like, hey, they made that vaccine and too fast. They made that vaccine so fast. How can we trust that? I want to know your thoughts on that. Just the fact of the speed of the vaccine, because it did seem a bit fast.
Yeah, so I'll kick it off, Dr. Arnold and Dr. Walker. And I do want to clarify, both my good brothers here, Dr. Walker and Dr. Arnold, are your MDs, your physicians. I come to you as a community health scientist, as someone actually doing community public health research. And one of the things that actually the speed of the development of this vaccine didn't alarm me, it actually encouraged me. Because as a scientist, we expect science to speed up, right? We think about things that we're able to do now versus, I tell young people, I expect that they'll be able to treat diseases and treat conditions much faster in a shorter time frame in the future than what we're able to do now. So, but I see from a community perspective how that can be alarming. You like, even the fact that we called it Operation Warp Speed, people were like, well, Kareem, I don't want to take anything that's been developed in warp speed. But what happens is that scientists like myself and others are in labs all the time developing new innovations. So the fact that this vaccine was developed, what we began to test in a short amount of time was developing the mRNA vaccine for COVID-19. But the concept of vaccine science, we got that on lock, Zach. That's not new. This concept of vaccine science has been developed for over 20 years. And because we got that science and we understand we got it down pat, it allowed us to then go in the lab and say, okay, there's this new virus out there, this coronavirus, COVID-19. How do we adapt this to develop it? I hope that makes sense.
Hey, Zach, I'll interject real quick too.
Okay.
Because I just want to add on to that very point. So one of the things that is very encouraging about the vaccine is that at no point in time have you had this many scientists looking at reviewing the data and blessing the data to make sure that it's safe and effective for communities. And when you're a stakeholder from any faction of society, one of the questions that you want to make sure is that, am I represented in the group? So when you look at the science and the amount of the proportion of individuals that participated in this trial that were Black was higher than most trials that we've done before in the past. You know, if I'm looking at population to population and I'm looking at a sample and I know that in Illinois, 13% is Black. I want to make sure that 13% of people in that trial are Black, because that's what we call generalizable. And that's what makes me confident that this vaccine works for our community. And then going a little bit a step further, I want to make sure that there's societies, people that look like me, that are vetting the science to make sure that's safe for my community. And we have that. National Medical Association, Black Physician Association, groups that are tasked with evaluating the safety and the efficacy of the vaccine. So I'll stop there because I know Dr. Arnold always has a nugget to add.
Well, I was I was trying to look at another iPhone, and people were in there like, this is iPhone 12. I want 15. When's 19 coming out? So we don't care how fast with our iPhones and everything, all our technology that's out there.
Right.
And we put that phone right up our ear, no matter what. And what Dr. Walker was saying and Dr. Watson was saying is absolutely right. And we, the science was done in 3 clinical phases that we always do every study in. And they did not break that cadence when they were doing the scientific studies. But the thing that changed was that they put the money up front. We knew our backs were up against the wall. This is a global pandemic that was killing a lot of people. So they put the money up front. They cut all the bureaucratic red tape, and then people were able to communicate because of the technology worldwide. And as Dr. Walker was saying, this has gotten more scientific scrutiny than any other vaccine ever produced on Earth. And we had the technology there for 20 years already. We used it for SARS and MERS. We used it for Ebola. So we know what the technology is. So it's not new technology. It's something that we just adapted to this particular problem.
I hear that. I hear that. But I think what a lot of Black men would say is like, hey, we're Black people. We don't necessarily always get the most honest shaking thing. I've heard people say, what about the Tuskegee experiment where, they were claiming it was a herpes thing and people ended up with herpes. I don't know the history. I wasn't alive, but I do know that that's something that I hear all the time. People always refer to the Tuskegee experiment and dealing with vaccines and not really trusting, I guess, the U.S. government to do right by Black people. So I guess my question is, what would make us feel more comfortable now in 2021?
Yeah, right away. I'm gonna just add to one thing with this. It was never a Tuskegee experiment. It was a Tuskegee study, because they never gave anyone anything. What they did was they diagnosed these men in Alabama back in 1932 and followed them to 1976, and that time frame, 72, 76. And what they did was a 40-year study, right? Mm-hmm. They just followed them and didn't give them penicillin to treat them. So what they did was withhold medical treatment. Mm-hmm. Don't take the vaccine for COVID-19. You're actually putting yourself in the same situation they were in and not being able to access an intervention that can save your life, your family's life. And we as Black men had the shortest life expectancy right now. And, we had some of the poorest health conditions. And we, if you decide not to take the vaccine and get sick from COVID-19, we don't know how long the chronic conditions are going to last, the long hauler syndrome. You're losing your pension, your 401k, your Social Security, everything you work for in your life is being taken away from you. So that intergenerational wealth is actually exacerbated by not following this. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Walker and then Dr. Watson.
Zach, I don't want to discount the thought of taking your time to take and to make sure that you understand something, right? Okay. You brought up some great data points for why somebody should take pause and inquire, why am I taking a vaccine? That is what we should do. That is the diligence that we should do. And the reason why I brought up those points about the Black Physician Association, as well as Black physicians and scientists that have gotten vaccinated and talking to our communities regularly, is because we're putting that onus on us to make sure that this is safe for our community. As an emergency physician, I've treated more than my fair share of Black patients that are at the end of their days and have not had that opportunity to be able to talk to their families for those last breaths. And it is devastating when you think about how fragmented the communities have become since COVID-19, how much of the economics have been lost from COVID-19, the amount of leaders, as Dr. Arnold was just mentioning, that we have lost that direct the moral fabric of our communities. By taking the vaccine, it is a declaration, it is a step to make sure that we keep our communities intact and we can hold the institutions and hospitals and community leaders accountable so that we don't ever get into this position ever again. I'll pass it to Dr. Watson.
Yeah, and I just want to close it out real quick, Zach. There's two things that's really important for listeners to know, particularly for brothers.
Okay.
As Dr. Arnold pointed out, when the United States Public Health Service study that happened in Tuskegee, Alabama, it was studying the natural progression of syphilis. Exactly what he said. Nothing was given. That's the problem. Even after that study started before penicillin was approved, but then once penicillin was approved, it should have been given to those men, and it was not, because they wanted to see the natural progression of that. But it's another really important thing that our listeners need to know. There was a thing, there's a thing in place now called IRBs, Institutional Review Boards. Institutional review boards are made up of people that look just like the doctors on this call, that look like you, community members and researchers that actually police, for a lack of a better term, research studies. They ask questions about how safe is it? Do the benefits outweigh the risk? Is it effective? Does it do what you said it's going to do? That didn't exist in that experiment, in that observational study that existed following the natural progression of syphilis in Black men. We have safeguards in place that we've never had before to make sure that nothing like that ever happens again.
Okay. So basically what you're saying with the Tuskegee experiment thing, that was a placebo, basically. Like,
not even a placebo. It's the best way to think about it is that, you know, what they did, and that's probably a whole nother show in and of itself, is looking at really what happened with these Black men. These are African-American Black men from the South, many of them who they would find Black men who actually were impacted by syphilis. And once they found out if you were impacted by syphilis, as opposed to treating you, they were following the natural progression of it to see what happens. And this is so unfortunate, you know, that this is a part of our history, and we got to own it and acknowledge that this did happen. Mm-hmm. But I work with family members like the Henrietta Lacks story. It's other people that similar things have happened to. And when I talk to the great-granddaughter of Henrietta Lacks, Veronica Robinson, she actually encourages people, A, to get the vaccine, and B, to participate in research, despite what happened to her great-grandmother.
Wow. Okay, Dr. Arnold, let me ask you this. Some people say, hey, I had COVID already. I went to Miami. Them flights was $25. I shut down there. I had COVID. Okay, I had COVID. Now they say, hey, Dr. Arnold, I don't need it. I don't need the vaccine. I'm straight. I've already beat it. What is your response to that? Do you still need the vaccine if you've already had COVID?
Yes, you do, because we don't know whether you've actually developed the persistent immunity that we would expect from you having a natural infection. Mm-hmm. Plus a lot of different variants out there. And what we do know is that, you know, the variants like the UK variant, now we're calling them like Greek alphabet letters, so alpha, beta, gamma, all that, because they started with the UK variant, the South African variant, you know, the Brazilian variant, 2 from California, 1 from New York. I mean, they're popping up all over the world. And we do know that the vaccine at this point is effective against those variants as well. With the natural infection, we're not sure of what kind of immunity you really get, how effective it is. So it is a definite recommendation that, you know, you do get vaccinated after you recover from COVID, if you have it recently, or if you had it in the past, to make sure you get vaccinated.
Okay. Dr. Walker, let me ask you this. Let me do this. Dr. Watson, this is for you. I've heard people say, man, you take that shot, they gonna change your DNA. Your whole DNA gonna change. That's the wildest one I've heard. That's the wildest rumor I heard, you know.
Vaccines do not affect or interact with our DNA in any way. So let's just nip that in the bud. Vaccines do not affect or interact with your DNA. The good thing is that this mRNA vaccine, once it gets introduced to your body, and your body mounts what we call an immune response, or once your body begins to get those antibodies developed to what it needs, your body has a natural way of clearing out certain mRNA. So this whole concept that it goes in, they're like, and you know, there people are like, well, I don't know the long-term effects of this because they've been studying it for a short period of time. We know the long-term effects of vaccines, and we know that vaccines do not change your DNA. We know that. So that's not an unknown. That's a known.
Okay. So we can stop that. Okay.
stop
We can nip that. We can nip
You
that.
agree, Dr. Arnold? We can stop that, right? We can shut that one
We can
down.
stop that. We've been hearing that DNA stuff. They're gonna change your DNA. And it's always like the worst brothers. You be like, bro, don't nobody want to be they don't want to make another you. All right, but all right, that's something else. But Dr. Walker, I want to ask you about this. To my knowledge, there's 3 different manufacturers of the vaccine. You got Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson. And I want to ask you, is there one that you, and I want you all to ask this, I'll start with Dr. Walker. Is there one that you lean to more than the others? Or should we trust them all? You know, we've heard stuff about Johnson & Johnson. They don't have the best reputation in the streets right now. When it comes to people who are even deciding to take the vaccine, they're like, hey, I don't want that Johnson & Johnson one. Yeah. So I would like for you to speak to that.
So usually my response is, if you have access to one, just take it. Like, if you can get it, just take it. I think from a public health perspective, operational perspective, Johnson & Johnson has some benefits in the sense that it's one shot. And if you are from a marginalized population where it's hard to follow up, such as being homeless, or just difficult to reschedule a follow-up appointment, that's a benefit. Just so that we're completely honest, they do have different efficacy. So Moderna and Pfizer, that's a 95% efficacy 2 weeks after the second shot. And Johnson & Johnson has roughly around a 75%. But there's so many benefits with getting the vaccine. There's 3 major benefits. One, it reduces your likelihood of getting COVID. Second, it reduces your likelihood of transmitting that to your community, right? To your most vulnerable. So if you're vaccinated, instead of compromising 3 or 4 people, you're only compromising just within your sphere. And then lastly, say you have multiple comorbidities, meaning you have hypertension, end-stage renal disease. One of the things that we know is if you have end-stage renal disease, your likelihood of death without vaccination is roughly 13 times compared to somebody that's healthy. That means you're getting admitted to the ICU. You might be intubated, have a tube down your throat for weeks on end. If you're vaccinated, maybe you just might have some fevers and chills. You know what I mean? You might not get admitted. And if you're healthy, you might barely even notice it. So so there's so many benefits and positive externalities with getting vaccinated that it truly is beyond yourself. It's affecting the community at large. But I'll pass it to Dr. Watson and Dr. Arnold to talk about their perspectives on the choices as well.
I would say, Dr. Arnold, do you have a favorite? Do you have one that you're like, hey, I'm leaning towards this one more than the other?
No, I like all 3 of them. And there's a thing I put together, and Dr. Walker's gonna laugh when he sees this. It was a tennis ball, and I had a day off at work in the last year. So I started putting the push pins in it. But this is like what the virus looks like with the spike proteins, out of it. And those vaccines are able to recognize this virus, even the variants. If you change the color of the pin, it's a variant, and it can still recognize this virus. So all 3 vaccines, as Dr. Walker was saying, keep you out of the hospital and keep you off of a ventilator. And I got vaccinated myself, and I got the Moderna, but I have people in my family who've had Pfizer. I actually had some people who had Johnson & Johnson. Okay. And so those people, I had a little bit of soreness in my left shoulder from the first shot. The second shot, I had a lot of pain in my right shoulder. That's because I ran into a door trying to go to a Zoom meeting. And both shots of my left shoulder had more pain in my right shoulder than I had in my left one. That's about 24 hours. So I pulled out pretty good from it. So, but I feel like I had a sense of relief that I don't have to worry as much about dying. I'd rather have a little bit of soreness and pain for 24 hours than, as Dr. Walker was saying, being on a ventilator for 6 weeks and maybe not getting off.
Right. Absolutely.
Couldn't agree more. I got the vaccine that was available to me. I work at the hospital in an FQHC, a community health center, and they're like, Kareem, which vaccine are you gonna get? And I'm like, the one that that's available to me. And the one that just happened to become available to me was Pfizer, so I took Pfizer, right? But, and that's the conversation, whichever one becomes available. And like I said, I work in a community health center. So for us, sometimes we have to give the one that we get from the Department of Public Health. And we tell our patients, whichever one we're getting, that's the one that we're promoting, because we believe in the science for all three.
Okay. All right. I can get with that. I guess my next question would be, why do you think COVID has affected the Black and brown communities more than it has other communities? Dr. Walker, I'm gonna start with you.
It's a complex answer. It's multifactorial. And I think when you think about Chicago and you think about our history, you can't have a discussion without talking about healthcare disparities, without considering the role that race and economics has played. They're just so closely aligned, especially when you consider the history of redlining and lack of wealth and social determinants of health for some of our most marginalized communities. And I'm throwing a lot of terms around, but I'm just talking about people's lived experiences. When we think about the options that most of our communities reside and have, the options of how close is a pharmacy, or how close is some healthy foods, how easy it is to get to the hospital, the different priorities that we face compared to other communities in terms of, am I going to take this day off of work, or am I going to go to the clinic? They're very real challenges, and everybody's making a rational decision based on what their situation is. And oftentimes this can culminate in comorbidities, which our communities have much higher rates of compared to others. But when we talk about the solutions, it's not about just telling people to eat better and be healthy and work out a lot. It's also about examining a lot of the institutions and the policies that are currently in place that have been devoid of the people that look like us. The IRB review boards that Dr. Watson was just mentioning, kind of applying that same strategy when we talk about local policies and grants and who gets money and who gets resources, making sure that we're represented. So I don't want to just put it down to one single solution. It's going to take a lot, and it's going to take a lot from our communities as well. But I'll pass it on to Dr. Arnold to offer his perspective as well.
Yeah, I think one of the major things that I was looking at is like, you have, where did this thing come from? It came from outside of Illinois. It came from it came from Europe, and then the virus landed here. Where did it land? It came into O'Hare Airport. It came into Midway Airport. It came into the inner city, and we have overcrowding in our inner cities where African Americans live. And the transportation, we have public transportation is more likely to be used within our community. So we had social crowding, and that's a perfect setting for the virus to spread from person to person. And there was a lot of pushback because we had someone in office who, and I'm not like a political person, so I'll say, DNC, we do nothing continuously, and then the RNC is, has to be, is a group of what I call them is a group. The GOP is a gathering of psychopaths. But so that being said, I'm covering almost all the political bases. but the problem is that they were saying, don't wear a mask, don't wear a mask. And people were saying, well, we're getting mixed messages. And we already have this thing in our community about, can we believe you? Because you already have been lying to us about so many, many, many things. And so that mixed message actually was very destructive to us. And so we saw a lot of people walking around without masks in our community. And that's one thing we know was helping to slow the spread. Now, if you go into an urban sprawl, right, and you go into the suburban communities and into rural communities, people are spread out more. You don't have that. So once the virus established itself, it showed that it did not care what your race or ethnicity was. It would spread from person to person. But I think it goes back to the social determinants of health, what Dr. Walker was saying.
And that's Zach, I do some research on, most of my research is on lung cancer. Well, actually on most preventable cancers, but I was doing some research on lung cancer and looking at neighborhood differences, right? And I'm sure many of you and the listeners heard about the lifespan, like just between one zip code change in Chicago can change your lifespan by up to 20 years. That means that your ZNA, your zip code, is more important than your DNA. So where you live can be a more determinant of how you live and how long you live than actually the DNA that you were born with. So if you think about that, and then you drop COVID in those situations, in one of our Southside clinics, we did a survey with some medical students and found out that 87% of our patients said they were food insecure. So you drop COVID-19 in communities that are already food insecure, that have high rates of diabetes, high rates of high blood pressure or hypertension, and other things that may have compromised immune system, plus that social crowding. And then don't do the blame game either. And these communities aren't food insecure because they choose to be. Those are systemic issues: racism, structural violence, things, Black lives not mattering. All those things are things that happen to our communities. And as a result, you see these conditions come like COVID-19 that are just further exacerbating our communities.
Wow. Okay. So I do want to say this. We are outside. That means things are opening back up. When you hear the young people say we outside, that means we are going to the parties, we going to the club, we on boats, we are outside. And
the
now,
IG is live.
yeah. I mean, it's lit now. So that means, and also a lot of people aren't wearing masks anymore, because the mask mandates have kind of fallen off. Capacity restrictions are going away, so you can now pack more people into venues, and live music venues are starting to open back up. I do comedy venues are opening back up, all that, without the restrictions at full capacity. So my next question is, what will happen, or what do you fear may happen if young people do not get vaccinated and they are outside?
Yeah, I'll start and kick it off to Drs. Arner and Walker. That's one of the things you talked about, the difference in the vaccine. One of the reasons that in our clinic right now, we're promoting events just even this upcoming Saturday on June 16th, promoting the Pfizer vaccine, because it's one of the ones that we're offering for youth that are 12 and older right now. Because our concern is that if we don't begin to get those youth, everyone is able to get vaccinated from 12 and up. If we don't get those youth vaccinated and older adults vaccinated and just families vaccinated, these variants that Dr. Arnold talked about earlier that are now, like we heard about the Delta variant and other things today, getting vaccinated helps protect you from the COVID virus and from those other variants, the strains that can come in and change. So if we don't make sure that we're masking up, keeping our social distance when you don't know who's vaccinated and know these gatherings, we could face a resurgence of the pandemic. So it's very important that we continue to be diligent.
So we're not quite out the woods yet, is what you're saying?
No.
I
think when we look at a lot of the data statewide, the biggest source is the younger population, 18 to 39. And the reason why it's so important that we think about how this impacts us, impacts everybody else, is essentially what Dr. Watson and Dr. Arnold just said. When you think about how the vaccine works, it's recognizing a structure so that it can prepare your immune system to fight it in the future. One of the best examples that I like to use is if you're a boxer, you go into the ring and you go up against somebody that has a weird technique. You're either going to get knocked out or you're not going to last too long. But if you have a time to kind of observe the technique, study it, recognize it, you're either going to last longer or you're going to beat it completely. If you're not protected, the latter is yourself with the vaccine. If you're not protected, you allow the variant to be almost unrecognizable. You allow the opportunity for the vaccine to not be effective. So the more people that are not vaccinated provides more of an opportunity for a variant to come about to undo all the work that we've been doing on the science of the vaccine currently and start from square one. And that's what we're trying to avoid. We're trying to get enough people vaccinated so that we can do away with any of the foreign variant that could potentially take over. So that's why we're trying to talk to kids that got, if you're an influencer and you're a leader, and you can influence some other people, show yourself getting vaccinated, get your classmates, get your crew, get everybody vaccinated, because that's going to be our next step to be able to continue to go out and kick it, go attend events and do all those things.
Right.
Dr. Arnold.
Yeah, because that's one of the things, Zach, because I love Dr. Walker's analogies, and because one of the things, it's almost like the vaccine is giving you your opponent's playbook. So when you go into battle with them, you already know everything they can do, all their moves, and that's what the vaccine is doing. It's giving your body the ability to recognize this virus once it presents itself to you. Because you say, okay, virus, I know everything about your proteins. I know exactly how to take you out of action, out of commission. And that's really what the vaccine is for. And you really hit on a good point, Zach. It was like, if you look at the percentage of people who've been vaccinated so far, white people represent about 60.9% of the population in Illinois, but they represent 62.3% of the people who've been fully vaccinated as of Monday. Right. Now, if you look at African Americans, we represent 13.8% of the population total, right? And out of that, we have 8.9% of the people who are fully vaccinated are African American. That means we're like 5 percentage points off of where we should be or more. And that's just ridiculous. We now know about 80% of people who are senior citizens 65 and above have been vaccinated. We know about half of the people who are in the range of 18 and up have been vaccinated. We know that still trailing behind the 12 to 18 because we just started the vaccination sequence with them. But we cannot allow ourselves to be left out the picture of vaccination, because even when we open up fully, you can still get COVID-19. The people around you who are vaccinated fully, they go like, okay, fine, pass through, no problem. And then, but you run across someone who has it, and then you fall susceptible to it.
All right, I have to let y'all go soon, but I have to ask. I got 2 more questions for you. Okay, so hold tight. Here, the one is, what do you say to someone who may have just went and got 1 shot of the vaccine? They're supposed to go back in 2 weeks. They didn't get the second one, and they outside like they fully vaccinated. What do you say to the person who just went and got one Pfizer or one of the Moderna?
You got to close the game. You got to close the game. I mean, you got to be a closer. I think let's just put it into perspective. Our communities have been the most impacted, so we can't half-step the game around what we need to do to be able to protect ourselves. So, and that means getting that second step, that second shot, that 95% efficacy. And it's not just you, it means bringing somebody with you that needs to get vaccinated as well, and who's eligible to get vaccinated. Because the last thing that we want to happen is to have an outbreak that starts out in our community and have the same story replay over and over again. These events are opportunities for us to move forward. And I think by being able to hold each other accountable and think of it as action beyond just yourself is the way that we improve our community and improve our way out of here. So close the game. You gotta close the game.
Right. Yeah, half the points in a winning Bulls game don't count.
Right. You can't win the first half. I get it.
That's right. Zach, as you say, almost doesn't count.
All right. Okay, I get it. So and this is the second to last question. One more. I just thought of this. What if you have so I have family members, the way my family is set up, my mom's side is real, they real church, they are real spiritual people. And, a lot of them are in the health field. Like my mom's a nurse, my brother is a nurse. A lot of them have, my sister's in pharmaceutical sales. So they rushed to get the vaccine. Okay, so it's no question. My mom's side is vaccinated. Now my dad's side, a little more heathenism, you know, they're a little more ratchet, you know. And I guess my question is, how can I encourage them, or what's your advice on trying to get them to understand the importance of taking the vaccine? And I don't want to give them a long, you know, scientific explanation that they may not understand or may not really care about. Like, what do you think, if in just one sentence, why should they get vaccinated?
And I'll start, and then I'll kick it
Okay.
up. The one thing is that, and Dr. Walker mentioned this before, being skeptical is not a bad thing, right? Asking questions is not a bad thing. So I would start there. When they come to you asking you questions, be like, you know what, you got the right to ask questions, and you should ask questions. We should actually ask more questions. So the question asking is not the bad thing. It's the lack of doing that's the bad thing, right? So it was all of us here have a lot of the answers, right? All of what we know. So I would say one thing. I would say make your decision based on facts, because a lot of people are not getting the vaccine based on myths, based on urban legends, and based on things that are just flat out not true. Okay. And when a family member come to you and they come up with a myth, be like, that ain't true. That ain't right. That ain't right. That is not a fact. Yeah. Send them to the website, send them to the Chicago Department of Public Health website, CDPH website, but send them to some place where they can get the truth. But let them know that ain't facts.
Get the facts.
Get the facts.
Okay. I'll be quick because I know we're running out of time. But after doing this work, obviously over the past year, some people are moved by facts. Some people are moved by their ability to go to the club. Some people are moved by their ability to go and play sports.
I was moved by the ability to get back active.
I think part of it is about framing, about also understanding what your family might matter to them. I mean, I'm sure they love you, and I'm sure their family matters to them, and that's a way to talk to them about making sure getting vaccinated. That is a way to protect them. But you know, my mother-in-law loves church. I know that there's no way they're going to open back church unless people are getting vaccinated, and the proper amount of people are getting vaccinated. And when she hears her pastor tell her to get vaccinated as well. So I think trying to highlight some of those issues, because everything is fair game. You know, you can't see a game unless people are getting vaccinated. Employers at some point, and some are requiring it to continue work. So I think it's also just thinking about how it affects people's lives. I'll pass it to Dr. Arnold.
Yeah, because you know, it's like, first of all, you know, because of structural racism and all that, as Black men, we are devalued, right? And this, we're devalued, and we have to step up to the plate and value ourselves, because in the future, you lose your future earnings. I'm saying Social Security. You know, if I die, I lose a pension, I lose 401k, I lose Social Security, everything I've been paying into. And most of us are, you know, vast majority of us are taxpayers. We're participating in society. If you want to have to be in a leadership role in your family, to say that you are going to survive, my son is going to survive, my grandkids are going to survive, you have to be healthy yourself. And if you shorten your life unnecessarily, you throw all of that away that you've been working for your whole life. You know, so it's not just about you, it's about everyone you care about.
Right.
So it's time for you to really go up and get vaccinated. And, you know, one of the things that scared me, I got this picture of, you know, back in the day when Richard Pryor said, he said, if you think we're going to bury you all those diamonds and that necklace and, and the chains you got on, you got to
right.
So it's like, I want to hold on to the things I have in my life as long as I can.
Right.
And they were talking about, you know, some people saying that microchips, you have to, you know, they can follow you. I said, then give me your wallet and give me your, you know, your credit card,
phone,
your cell phone.
Right.
So there are a lot of things that are out there we have to overcome, which are kind of ridiculous if we really sit down and think about it. It's the most important thing is that a lot of people have died. Over 600,000 people have died. If we had the vaccine in December of 2019, we would have saved over 600,000 lives in the country.
Wow. Yeah.
We can't afford to lose another 600,000. So
can't afford to do it. So listen, I'm gonna tell you all, go get the vaccine. I'm vaccinated. We're vaccinated, and we're just fine. Okay, everybody is just fine, but still do your own research. I want you to do your research. I encourage you to do your research. I encourage you to get the facts, and you know, share this video with someone else who may be on the fence about getting vaccinated. Okay, because Chicago, we trying to have Chi-Town summer. You know how it is, summertime Chi. It goes down, and we trying to be on them boats. We trying to really enjoy these roof decks. You know, we only get this much summer, so let's enjoy it. Let's enjoy it. Where can people find out more information about getting the vaccine, or just more information if they just want to do some research on their own?
So one of the things, you can call 1-833-536-9929. Again, that's 1-833-536-9929.
Okay.
Yeah, and then idph.gov, you know, because the Illinois Department of Public Health has a website with all the data, all the information, the links to the CDC, and you know, Chicago Department of Public Health is another good resource. And you have multiple resources, but one of the things they can do is make sure they tune into your show and get the real scoop.
That's right. That's right. I got the real facts. Another thing, it was so easy getting the vaccine. Like, I was talking to one of the nurses, and the nurse who was giving me the vaccine, and I hate shots. See, I'm the type of person, I hate shots. To this day, I still hate them. So I was talking, and she was like, yeah, I'm clenching ready. And she was like, yeah, I'm done. She was putting the Band-Aid on. I'm like, oh, we're already finished? You know? She was like, yeah.
Didn't even notice.
Oh, yeah.
So I, and like I said, my arm, I did have a little soreness in my arm, but it went away so fast. You know, you definitely had worse. So Black men, especially young Black men, go get vaccinated. I want to thank you all for your time. Thank you. I know you guys, you know, doing great work, doing very important things. I don't.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for this platform.
Yeah, thank you for providing this space.
No problem. No problem. Thank you.
And we're brother to brother love, man. We love all the African-American men out there. You know, that's why Dr. Walker, you know, Dr. Watson went to their field. That's why you did too, Zach, because you want to spread a word of positivity and have brothers survive. Because we have got to survive, and a lot of things against us, but this is definitely one of the things that can help us.
That's what I was gonna say. We don't need to add something else against us. We already got enough.
No, we don't.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you all for your time. Y'all be safe.